live from the Capri Campers mobile podcast studio and community development center. This is the Small Truck Campers podcast, where we aim to build community, share inspiration, and encourage others. We got a lot of great things to cover out in this episode, so why don't you grab your favorite campfire beverage and let's hit the road. So I'd like to welcome Tim Robel here on the Small Truck Campers podcast. Tim's calling in from down in San Bernardino, California, and he's got his awesome Hummer rig in the background, which we're going to get into all of his rigs, and he has had quite a few in the past. So without further ado, Tim, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Small Truck Campers podcast.
You're welcome. I'm totally honored to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to have you on as a guest, and I've been following your builds for, I think, since the GMC Canyon, which is what first made me follow you. But we had a conversation last week just kind of introducing ourselves, and let's just start there for the listeners. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what got you into the outdoors, and kind of, where you'd like to go as a kid and explore.
Grew up in Redlands and started camping at like probably 6 months old. My mom and dad were into it. My dad was a motorcycle rider / kind of recreational racer from time to time. But I remember being on a tricycle with a little helmet on out at El Mirage Dry Lake. And I think I was 2 or 2.5 then, and started riding motorcycles at 3.5. And kind of, we camped, family camping probably 15 times a year. And just kind of, went from there. My junior year in high school, we got a lot of, all of us could drive. We had a lot of guys that rode motorcycles and even a couple of girls. And we planned our first Christmas camp out in Cougar Butte in Johnson Valley, about 20 miles from where King of the Hammers is held. And we went out there that first year and had a great time. Most of us froze to death trying to figure out that whole process. But I've always been into backpacking and, truck camping with the motorcycle. And I just kind of progressed from there. Kind of going on from that, we did that our senior year. And that time I had a little lowered mini truck, and that was kind of my first learning to customize stuff. And I made it into a convertible. And then as I started camping more often, a lowered truck was not practical for off-road. So I raised it up and became a pre-runner, where I bought my first Sawzall and cut fender wells. And it just kind of went from there. I had a business going where I was lowering cars. I bought my first welder at 17. It was super expensive. It was like $2,200 back in the day. And it was the Lincoln SP250, which was like a total like industrial welder. And I bought that as a junior in high school. And my dad's like, "You're not welding in the garage. You're going to burn the place down." So I'd wait till he was gone and plug it into the dryer outlet and try to teach myself how to weld, which I wasn't very good at the beginning. But progress through that, and I went into the Air Force Reserve, pre-enlisted March 1986, and I left July, and did 22 years Air Force Reserve, and then I did 19 years, 8 months as a civil service Air Reserve technician attached to that. And first as an aircraft inspector, and then my last 8 years were as an aircraft machinist welder. I already had my fab shop going then, and the shop chief had saw that, and he was like, "Wow, I want you to come work for me." So that was the best job I had in the Air Force, and had a really great boss, and it was just really a nice time. But right then, the economy was doing pretty good, and a lot of money was coming into off-road. That was kind of my big focus, and just kind of paired everything that I did in my childhood together, from bicycles to custom motorcycle stuff. Motorcycles was actually my first fabrication that I got into. A YZ250, and you'd buy a pipe off the shelf and go to bolt it on, and it wouldn't bolt on. You had to oval out some holes and make some stuff work. It was when manufacturing back then wasn't exactly a science. But I learned just to kind of take a product and modify it so it would work. And I turned that into a business, building, bumpers and roll cages. At first with this Suzuki Samurais, and then Jeep. I didn't really get into the camper building stuff until probably 2011 or so. And that was just an evolution of riding dirt bikes and trying to find something that was a better solution. I've had cab over campers and enclosed trailers and fifth wheels. So went through a lot. I've probably had, I don't know, 25, 30 RVs, and decided like, wow, I need to build my own stuff because I kind of have an eclectic style, and my style might not be the same, or, something that everyone likes and enjoys, but I build purpose built stuff for the things that I do. And I try to make it easy to use, easy to work on, kind of that two is one is none strategy with like fire extinguishers and sources of power, sources of fire. And so a lot of my rigs, I integrate like a cubic mini wood stove as well as the diesel heater. And even in my big truck, which is a 6-wheel drive, 28-foot box, 15 foot of that is habitat. But I also have a mini split in that runs off of solar.
Dang.
So I have heat and air off of that.
Yeah.
That it's kind of using like old world ways, which I consider like the wood burning stove. And then something that's very fuel efficient, like the cubic mini, or the diesel heater, to keep things warm and keep you comfortable in a habitat. So
Yeah,
that's kind
that's
of been my transition from kind of as a kid coming up through, and then kind of learning this last evolution. And my biggest build was a box van, I guess, my first build. And it went through like 4 or 5 different stages of build out, just to suit different needs. At one point in time, I had my little rock crawler that would pull in there, and then pull that out, and then that would make into an enclosed trailer setup.
yeah. So I think we just covered everything. I think the podcast is good now. No, I'm just kidding. But that was definitely a good overview of from start to where you're at now, and I appreciate all those little kind of milestones along the way, and we'll get more into the builds exactly and your strategies. But I do want to back up a little bit, talk about first of all your time in the Air Force. So what were you working on, like aircraft wise? Anything super cool? And then I've never heard of an aircraft welder. I know that was after your reserve time.
It was
Do
during
people
my
actually
my
weld
reserve.
aircrafts?
Yeah, so I started with out here at Norton Air Reserve. Actually, it was Norton Air Force Base at that time. We worked as an associate unit with active duty at the time on the 141s, and I was actually in a phase dock where we took the plane apart and inspected it, and then fixed the things that we found, and then would sub the other things out. Like if it was a sheet metal crack or something, the structure that needed to be fixed, you would write that up for sheet metal, and they'd come fix that. And at that point in time, we had 178 people on 3 shifts, and we would turn a plane in 2 days. So plane would come all apart, kind of look like a skeletonized plane with all the access panels, and then we'd put it all back together. And then at that time, I became engine run certified. So we would go, once the plane's all back together, we'd go out to the flight line and refuel it, and then do the engine runs, cycle everything through, trim all the engines to make sure they made the same power at the same settings, and go from there. And pretty much that was my job, inspection dock. I did a few other things like a weapons courier, weapons custodian. I also was the maintenance liaison to the hostage rescue team out there. I worked with FBI, some CIA guys, local SWAT, on shoot and no shoot places inside the aircraft for aircraft breaching. Would teach how to open a door, little things like that, like where you could access the aircraft that maybe a Tango wouldn't understand. Like someone's going to come from here. Normally you're thinking they're going to come through the hatches. But we worked through all of that. So I did a few little things there, and did a few missions that way. So I kind of have like a verse background in that, plus the technology piece of studying an aircraft 8 hours, 10 hours a day. And then I would integrate that into my engineering and designs and my builds. Primarily, like when
Awesome.
I had the fab shop going, I was into rock crawling, and that became a little slow and boring for me. And I also was a sand car guy, a desert racer. So I kind of took all of that and incorporated into more of a go fast rock crawler, which kind of was what became the Ultra 4 cars that King of the Hammers race now.
Wow. Yeah, let's integrate you know, you got the welder, you're in the Air Force Reserves. Talk to me about how the fab shop came about and what kind of vehicles you were building for customers or what kind of solutions you were coming up with. Where was the fab shop located? And I know it's an interesting story, but how the fab shop ended. We can
So
get into that too, because that's pretty. Couple things that get me fired up. Good waves, deep powder, dirt roads, 7.3 cold starting, but more importantly, a Fuera coffee out of my small truck camper's coffee mug. A Fuera coffee. They've been a proud supporter of the podcast channel for a while now. Right now, I'm drinking the black gold espresso for this podcast episode, and this stuff gets me fired up. Highly recommend you check them out. It's Rainforest Alliance certified, all organic, small batch, single origin, all made down in El Salvador and shipped up here to the United States for our enjoyment. So do good, go afuera, use code SmallTruckCampers at checkout for 10% off. And while you're there, coffee pairs perfectly with a Small Truck Campers mug, making sure you're equipped to rip throughout your day. To check out the Small Truck Campers mug, check out the link below, or check out the web store link in bio. Phew. Interesting.
1986, I went to basic training. I did a year of active duty for tech school and then onboard training with Green Ops out here at Norton. I already had that welder that I had bought in high school. So then the next evolution to that is to buy a tube bender. And so I bought a JD squared tube bender and then a notcher and then a drill and started working on little stuff like a chop saw and building welding tables. Taught myself to TIG weld. Bought a TIG welder, of course, and just kind of went down that path of everything I do. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I like to be the best at anything that I can be. Not so much in competition with everyone else, but I want my skill set to be, and I work on that every day still, the best I can be. And that's what I kind of got Tim Robel concepts off the ground with. So 1987, I still actually was in the Air Force and had a place at my mom and dad's house. So I rented my first house and my garage shop became my workshop. And through word of mouth, I would do like Suzuki Samurais were becoming super popular and you could buy one for $1,200-1,500 used. And I would do roll cages. So like I'd start on a roll cage Friday after work, come in hands from Norton, and I'd put in 5-6 hours on laying out the basic cage design and get a roll cage in that thing and deliver that Sunday night late and then go back to work Friday or Monday morning. So yeah, my Tim Robel concept started in a garage. It stayed in the garage I moved out to San Jacinto in 92 when we went to March Air Reserve Base. And I really stepped it up. I built my first tube chassis car I moved it there. So that was probably probably 1990. I started 89 or 90. I bought a Chevy Blazer and I cannibalized the axles, the transmission motor, master cylinder, a column out of it, and then just built a 4-link tube car out of that. And there was the guy, Sonny Honiger, I believe his name was, and he was in Four Wheel and Off-Road magazine, but he built the first Scorpion, kind of looked like a tubular Humvee. And he came up with a neat forced articulation design with airbags. I did mine on coilovers, but I just started that evolution there. And I went to a couple of meetings, like where we were integrating different things. I've been a part of different boards on fabrication, but there's been a lot of people that talk bad about the garage shop. And I always laugh at that because the garage is where you have no pressure and you can go out there and you can maximize your time. There's no commute. You could actually take the time to think and do the job 100% right. Like you get up the next morning after you've fabbed something up and it's not right, you could cut it off and do that. When you have a commercial building, which I'll go into that in a bit, when you have that commercial building, you have rent, you may have an employee, you have electricity there, it's all separate bills, separate from the house. And that makes that timeline where you have to really be efficient and make something work. And sometimes you're not turning out your absolute best product. And I don't want to say that I skimped on stuff, but sometimes you have to get through an evolution with something that may not be the best innovative work, although it's high quality, you didn't have the time to develop the product. And in 1995, I got my first building, 1,500 square feet. I built myself a surface tables to build tube chassis and started building rock crawlers, started perfecting them on how to go fast. And I think it was shortly after that, if you know the name Randy Slauson, he's been a 3-time King of the Hammers winner. I met Randy. He was building rock crawlers in his garage, bomber fabrication. And we got to be good friends, and we talked about different welding strategies. And, I'd only see him maybe every 3 or 4 months, although we were probably located within 20 miles of each other. It was just how it worked out. But we were both doing our own innovative solutions on what we thought would be a great package for rock crawling and going fast. Um, Things started to take a turn probably in 2000, maybe 2001 or two. I started getting more into motorcycle fab and the side-by-side stuff. And I got a bigger shop, 10,000 square feet, right across the freeway from Chaparral Motorsport, and had two chassis tables and had 8 guys. We did a lot more motorcycle stuff. I did a TV show, not super popular here in America, but abroad it was. It's called iCustoms. And I built this cool street fighter, and I used some of my blacksmithing in it and metal shaping. At one point in time, I probably had one of the largest English wheels here in Southern California. I think it had a 68-inch throat on it where you could compound curves, and I was doing like roofs and hot rods and stuff then, where we're doing chops, lowriders, pre-runners, side-by-side stuff. I kept 8 guys super busy as well as doing art. And it's funny for being an off-road fabricator, what I know now, actually, it's the art piece that actually made more money than fabricating roll cages and racks and bumpers for guys.
Everyone's always looking for a deal, except for the art buyers.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're in the 10,000 square foot shop, and mostly what kind of motorcycles? Like enduro, like dual sport, or like kind of like
I had
choppers, or
I had everything from motorcycle trials, which I've been doing for over 30 years, observed trials. And from there would be a 300 two-stroke, kind of one of the first extreme enduro riders here in America. Came out of trials to do that. Um, Dual sport, adventure, and then I was also in the street bike scene. I built a couple R1 custom projects, a couple Hayabusa stuff. Hayabusa had like a 330 rear tire. The R1 Fighter, which is under, if you Googled Bushido Motorsports or Bushido R1 Fighter, I was featured in Ultimate Motorcycling for that build. And it was just kind of a really neat, over the top, futuristic, like Batman. Like it made you feel pretty awesome on it. You get on it, you felt like a superhero riding it.
wow.
And we did the film shoot that way in that superhero style. So
Yeah, that's super cool. That's awesome. So, take me from the fab shop to kind of your first off-road, the GMC Canyon. I think that's kind of the one that I don't want to say put you on the map because obviously you've been on the map for a lot of stuff. But in terms of like the small truck campers community, that's kind of where I first heard about you.
okay.
And talk to me about the tragic story of how the shop ended up closing.
So the shop ended up getting robbed on 24 December, and I forgot what the year is now. But we basically lost $367,000 worth of equipment. There was 13 Mexican nationals. They had 2 semis. Came in, cut the power live, and cut the phone line live. And we know that because there was a camera on another business that the police were able to get, and pretty much liquidated me to the point where I couldn't no longer stay in business. I kept the guys for as long as I could. Great guys, trained well, craftsmen, and I had to let them go and basically brought everything back home to my little shop here in San Bernardino, a 2-car garage with a 20 by 18 patio over that. And my whole see how to put this, vision of myself. My self-esteem was so low at that time because I had done everything that I could think of to do. And now I'm home, I'm broke, and it's time to reinvent myself. So I started YouTube. Um, I had a great skill set in my pocket, and I started a channel for welding for a local manufacturer, and worked in as a expedition welder for their videos, how tos and tips and tricks type thing. And I did that for a little while as I landed a next client that I built out of the garage, and then that's when I realized that like this huge tragedy that happened, and I was so big and everything going on that I'm actually making just about the same amount of money take home as just working just me out of my own shop for a good client, building him exactly what he wants. And all of my clients have been super eclectic, and they kind of want this something that they want that's kind of, you can't go buy it, and most guys won't work with them to build it. Most guys have a plan, and that's what they build. They don't build like Randy Slauson, for the most part, doesn't build independent suspension cars. He builds solid axle cars, and he has a chassis around that. He'll sell you a chassis, or he'll build you a full turnkey. But he's only done one independent car that I know of. But most builders are that way. Extreme performance with their sandrails. They got a couple of different variants that they offer, but they don't do a custom solution. And I'll get into that in just a minute. Um, being the money is really not there in doing the custom work. It's having a product that can go down an assembly line or a production line that you've built. It makes it more cost efficient. But for myself, I've always liked building something different each time. And these eclectic clients have made that possible for me to do that and still make a little money at it. So I did that out of the house. With that, I saw the future, and that was the CNC machining. So I bought a CNC mill. And then a little later on, I bought a CNC plasma and a CNC lathe, and I made custom parts and did small batch runs for people, whatever they wanted. In the machining community, you usually have to do, they don't really want to talk to you if you're going to do anything less than 500 parts. But if you're an entrepreneur and you want to try out something new, that's what I targeted, was people come in and they just want a small run. They wanted a 1 or 2 run prototype, changes to the prototype until we could get like a production piece. And then maybe I would do 10 to see how those would sell. And then I would take that and pass that on to somebody that's going to do a run of 500, because I wasn't interested in really doing that. I'm kind of that problem solving guy, the solution based company that I wanted to do. And I did that right out of the garage. That's when I discovered that the machines never had problems of calling in sick and problems at home. And it kind of worked out really well. I had the dogs around me all day, could drink coffee while the machine's running. And it was just neat finding new solutions on that. I got that 2015 GMC Canyon. Left it stock for about a year and a half before I bought my first rooftop tent, because I already had a motorhome, and then I already had this box van, and then I sold both of those. So that became my sole camper. And I did a 10-day road trip out of that with a dirt bike and a mountain bike and a tent and a cooler. And that was kind of miserable. Not a whole lot of places to shower. I had a little porta potty that worked out really well. But we did some remote stuff, 5 miles of hell. We did a couple places in Moab and Zion. We just kind of did this path for riding some of the hardest places that we could ride for extreme enduro. And at the end of the 10th day, I'm like, I'm going to get a rooftop tent. So that was the next evolution of getting into overlanding. I bought a rooftop tent. I put it on the roof, and noticed my fuel mileage went from, gosh, I think that truck would get 27 miles a gallon, V6. You set it on cruise control, go down the road perfect. And I was doing a lot of commuting from here to take care of my dad in Bullhead City. And yeah, I'd get 27 miles a gallon. Then I put this rooftop tent on, I'm getting 18. And I'm like, wow, I need to get this thing down low. I'm a fabricator. I'm solution based. So let's build my first bed rack and keep this thing low. So that's what I did. And built that. That turned out neat, and I ended up paneling it with some pop-up windows on it. Probably you didn't see that variation of the truck, and did that. It worked out cool. Went camping with it for probably a full season. Decided I wanted to do a bigger version of that, so I did the Tepui, that double XL with the screen room on it, and then I changed up that rack so it could stay low. Um, but then I could raise it high on some pins and put some dirt bikes under it. So during the week, I could keep it low and use it as a commuter or wherever I needed to go. And then if I was going out on the weekends or going out on a trip, then I could put a couple dirt bikes below it and go out. And that variation worked really good. I had to lift it up on 33s at the time, and decided that me and my wife were going to go camping at Telephone Cove out in Laughlin, kind of a remote spot that has access to Lake Mojave. So we did 4 days there, and the system was working really, really well until 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds came up. And it was so windy at like 4 in the morning. Somehow it blew the bow out of the inside of the tent. I have no idea. It took me like 2 hours to figure out how to get it back in. And I have no idea how that worked. But we were chasing all of our tent bags and different chairs and stuff. Stuff was in the river or in the lake. And we ended up leaving about 6 in the morning, soaking wet, cold, windy. And I said, I told my wife, I'm going to build an adventure truck. And I'm going to build it so it works in the wind because I still have to commute in it out to Bullhead. And it's always windy there. So let's figure out how to do that. And she goes, yeah, we're not doing this again. So that's when that first creative thing of building something for me came out. And I was like, let's look at like something that can go down the road, aerodynamic. And here again, with not a whole lot of money in my pocket, I'm working with the truck I had. And there's another story on that when I finish this, is sometimes you got to modify the truck you have instead of sitting down with a clean sheet of paper and designing what you should buy to build your ultimate platform. And so I was always fighting weight, length, looks on that vehicle. And I didn't really love how it looked. It was definitely spacey looking, but it drove down the road really well in the wind. And with the wind, I had the tapered nose in it where you slept in the cab over. And then it had like a little day bed for a couch, kind of the same layout that I ended up doing in the Humvee, just at a larger scale. But I built that out. I had springs built for it. It had 3-tube triple bypass shocks in the rear, so it was tunable. It rode good. It handled well. And it actually became pretty much just like a normal pickup, although you had all of your stuff with you at all times. And that's when I spent the money on the solar and went with the Renogy. I went with the flexible panels on it. I think I had 675 watts on it. And Snowmaster refrigerator in it, a little porta potty, Fedford Curve with the electric flush. I had a hot water shower in it. So I kind of had everything I needed in this small little footprint. And that thing worked out really well. And it took me to COVID in that, where I went and, once again, I'm taking care of my dad. I want to make sure I'm not bringing him something. And so I went and isolated out in the desert for 2 weeks. I did a full 14 days out in the desert. And that's when I designed Oscar Mike. And that's when that clean sheet of paper come out. You got 14 days that you're by yourself, a clean sheet of paper, and you're going to design like you're a 5-year-old kid, your dream. It's going to have 2 swimming pools, and it's going to have a welder and a mill and a lathe and a fabrication table and solar and water purification. And so I designed that with a clean sheet of paper, but I kind of was designing just the habitat on that. And I was going to build it on an F550. And I knew what I wanted was going to be too big for that platform. And that's when I seen the FMTVs, Family of Medium Tactical Vehicles. There was a forum on Facebook, and Sean Filner was the guy that reached out and said, hey, you should build this. I've seen some of your builds. You should build on this platform. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So a couple days I did my research, and it was cold out. It was super cold out. Like the desert was like 23 degrees at night. And, my day walks would be collecting little pieces of firewood for that cubic mini to stay warm because that was the only source of heat I had. And that's when I discovered there's a weather app on your phone, and you could actually leave and go somewhere where it's nice and still in the desert. So on I think it was day 9, I went out to Havasu and camped remote there and finished up the design phase on the box for Oscar Mike, and then did my research. I think there's something like 21 different variants of these family of medium adaptive vehicles. And I was like, well, I need a big platform. So the base on Oscar Mike is based on a 8.5 ton military wrecker. And it's the longest wheelbase, the heaviest frame, but it shares about 98% of the other parts with the other family of vehicles. And I was like, oh, I'll have to find a wrecker. And so, yeah, I did my research. So that's what I learned from the Canyon to go into the big truck was source out your vehicle and your what habitat and how you want to live. Define what you really want. And sometimes you got to do that on a clean sheet of paper, write that down, scribble stuff out, rethink it, and go down that path. And then the other thing that I'll chime in on that is when you're designing this vehicle, you may be taking manufacturer specs for the refrigerator, the stove, and all of this. But you can't really like machining. You can build stuff in CAD and you can machine things in high speed machining, and that part turns out perfect. But when you're building in a real world, that refrigerator said that it was 14 and an eighth, and you've only allowed for 14 and an eighth. But they didn't put in mind that that refrigerator door opens and it adds 2 inches to that area that you need to open up. So now that target doesn't work for you and you have too many things in too small of a space. So I say buy all your stuff first and then do your layout where it's going to go and then kind of build around that. And that's how I've been building vehicles. That the Humvee was my kind of my final project on that because that's going to be my final build. And you learn from that because I ran into that with the Canyon and then I didn't learn the lesson and I ran into that with building Oscar Mike. So
Wow. So Oscar Mike, um, what's the power plant on that thing? How did you find it exactly? And then, well, we went over what's in the habitat, but why don't you tell us about the actual construction of the habitat and if you outsourced that or if you built that in-house?
no, everything was me and I built it in a single driveway in between houses in the element. And I talked to the neighbors first because we share this kind of open space there. And they're like, no, go ahead. Sounds good. So I sourced the truck first. I found it from a military broker up in Oregon. And it was actually a wrecker. It had all the cranes and I think it had 5 winches on it. It had a big boom on it. And I'm like, hey, the truck was $35,000. It had 5,300 miles on it. It was in great shape. So I said, hey, I want to get his bare frame rails. I'll pay that price, but you got to strip all that stuff off of it. And so they did. And that took about 5 months on waiting for it. Of course, I wasn't in a hurry. And I had the Canyon up for sale because this was going to be my next. I was going to go for an adventure truck, which I call like a daily driver that still will take you out on expeditions, but it's a smaller platform. But this is an expedition truck. And so I sourced the right truck with the right mileage in the right condition and had it flatbedded in, backed it in the driveway, and I did my first order of steel on it and started building out the flatbed bolted to the frame rails. So like everything, it's controversial on how you build things. Everyone's like, you have to do spring capture. No, you have to do an expedition mount with 2 mounts in the front and 1 in the back. And it's got to be able to flex. And I got to looking at it and I'm like, these frame rails are 1/2 inch thick. So I bought a mag drill and I drilled all the holes and I used these construction A60 1-inch bolts. And I basically cut out tabs on the Torchmate and bolted this thing. It's welded in the front to the bulkhead and it's welded in the back because I extended the frame 8 feet off the back. And I basically started with laying out 2 inch by 2 inch, 190 wall tubing, square tubing. And then the main rails were 2.5 by 2.5 by 253, like female trailer hitch. And I laid that out at 33 feet first because I thought that's what it would be. I moved the fence because I had to move the fence to build. And
Wow.
the proportions, just from what I could see, weren't right because the proportions are always important to me. And that was one of the downfalls that I did on the GMC Canyon is the bed length was only 7.5 feet because proportionally that's what looked great. Practicality wise, you can't go get a piece of plywood from Home Depot at 4x8 and make it fit. And so using it as a practical vehicle, that 8 foot for picking up a piece of plywood or whatever it is actually came into effect. So when I did the Humvee, I made sure I did that. But build construction, I went with what I knew. There's probably 10 ways, in my opinion, that you can build a great camper. Um, I do structural steel for the flatbed to give it a great foundation. All of my main corners are 1/8 inch, and then all of my 24 on centers are 65 thousandths 2x2. And then I put that together with some Reflectix and polystyrene that I get from Home Depot on 4x8 sheets. And then I double side sticky tape 3M VHB on the tubing with a light skim coat of spray Rust-Oleum professional spray paint. But if you go too heavy on it, that VHB will pull the paint off. So you just got to do enough not to get the rust and enough to still have great adhesion. And then I buy these aluminum panels that are 40 thousandths thick. They come in 4x8s or 4x10s. They come painted, and you can actually put a 90-degree bend in them and the paint won't flake off. It's actually great stuff to work with. And when you stick that panel on that VHB, it's stuck. You have to make sure that you have everything lined up precise because once it goes in, you will tear a panel up trying to get it off. I know that because I had to tear a panel off because one didn't go on exactly perfect. And that buys you about a half a day delay getting all the double-sided sticky off, getting the panel off. A lot of times you're pulling and ripping the aluminum before it'll come loose on the glue. And
Wow.
once I get that bonded on the inside, then I run a Sikaflex 291. I love that product. Not endorsed or sponsored by any of these, but I use that, and I probably bought $6,000 worth of that. I don't know if I should call it a silicone or a sealant or a bonding agent, but it's in the marine industry. But I do a feign seal around that, and then I stick this polystyrene to that. It goes in wet, and that kind of works as almost doing, not quite, but like a vacuum bond structure. You're basically doing a honeycomb structure type panel. And then I like to do a wood on the interior. And a lot of my builds have carpet in there. And I've had several people comment about the carpet. Like, I don't know, there's too much carpet for me. It's like, well, when you're in the cold, the carpet helps dissipate the moisture and it gives it a place to go and sit and rest until it can dry out. If you notice on some of the composite structures, when it's cold or they're running the oven to cook, it creates condensation, and you have that condensation is raining inside. Everything gets cold and moldy. None of my rigs, because of the build construction, actually run into those areas. And another thing I like is because of your breath, I like to have a carpet where you sleep because it does the same thing as it
Huh.
just traps that moisture and gives it a place to go. And when I do the sealant on the wood, I do the same thing. I do a burnt torch technique, and then I use a unicorn spit for a water-based gel stain. And then I do a 2X, there's usually 3 to 6 coats of clear on that. But the backside is untreated. And so that water has somewhere to go and sit and not mold. And easy to pull apart. Like you got something that you need to chase, like a leak. In Oscar Mike, I did have a leak when I first put it together, and I was able to pull the tongue and groove off with the screws and see exactly where it was leaking, which was on the vents. The Max Air fans had a little flaw in the rubber seal, and I chased that leak for probably 3 months before I pulled the whole roof apart. Took about a half a day, but I could see exactly in the rain where it was coming through, and then was able to fix that. So, everyone's got a build style. Timmy from Truck House Life, he builds a wood cabin basically on the back of his F-350. That's a super cool build. There's several ways to do it. Traveling Together journal. He does like a plywood with a thin coat of fiberglass and then a paint. Some guys do different things. There's several different ways to come up with a creative solution. Basically, you're trying to fight thermodynamics and leaking. And eventually that thermal is going to come through no matter what you have. So if you're camping in the cold, even if you have a total composites box that's 2-inch thick and you have a structure in that, sooner or later that cold is going to find its way into your environment. You have to have some type of heat source. And it wasn't until just last year I discovered a diesel heater, and what a game changer that is. I absolutely love the Cubic Mini. Nothing makes my arthritis feel better. But that diesel heater is ease of use, and it really does just sip fuel, and you can stay warm all night. So I think that's a great solution.
Just a huge shout out to Capri Camper for making this podcast possible. Having this mobile podcast studio is just a perfect way to have it set up, ready to roll, invite awesome guests onto the show, and I get to enjoy the craftsmanship, how well this thing is built, and I love just looking around. It's so inspiring. It really makes for a good show. So thanks to Capri Camper. If you're interested in the Capri Camper or you're considering a Capri Camper, feel free to hit me up. I did a full walk around tour with the owners. I had a podcast on with the owners as well, and I got to really learn the ins and outs of how Capri Campers are made. So if you're considering a hard-sided camper for your small truck, Capri Camper is where I would start my search. If you got any questions, feel free to DM or email me. Be happy to chat with you about them because they make some really great products for a variety of trucks. And they're stylish, they're comfortable, they're insulated, they're warm, and they're timeless, to be honest with you. No one else is doing what they're doing. So check out Capri Camper, or if you got any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or a DM and we can chat. So that's a pretty big endeavor to take on, Oscar Mike, especially in the front yard or on the side yard, however you want to put it, with steel orders and composite or runs to Home Depot for insulation panels, etc.
Yes.
How did you avoid burnout, and how did you get motivation, and why did you decide to build the Humvee, which we can see in the background?
Motivation doesn't play a part of that. You start motivated and you're going to lose motivation at some point in time, and you're going to have some grit and discipline. And it doesn't matter when you're taking, like Oscar Mike was a full 2-year build, and I did 99.9% of that. I could lift up that big frame rail. I'm a 230-pound dude that works out daily. I got that first frame rail in place, and then the second frame rail I tried 3 times before I could get it in place, and I couldn't do it. I just didn't have the strength to get the second one in place. So my 82-year-old neighbor at the time walked over and he says, "I could help you with that." And I said, "It's too heavy, Jim." Yeah. So he helped me with getting that in place. And he would hold some things from here and there when I was tacking things in place. Jim Kitchen, super great guy. He held the world record for roadster class in Bonneville for, I think it was something like 12 or 18 years. And one of those old guys that comes over and cusses at you, and he might tell you something 3 times, but he definitely kept me on point with the quality assurance. That doesn't look good. You gonna cut that off? Yes, I am, Jim. But you have to just get up. If you're sick, go out and do something. Get going. And on Oscar Mike, I never worked less than a half day. And a half day's 12 hours. Most of those days were 16s, 18s. And you just have to stay focused and get up. Like, I think the interior, after everything's built out, putting the tongue and groove on the ceiling took like 3 weeks. 7 days a week of just cutting, fitting, making sure things are burned and stained. They go together right, taking your time, because I wanted that as I thought that was going to be my last build. And I wanted that as my calling card of like, hey, this was my final project. This is what I built. And so quality stayed high. And there was several mornings that I would get up and just be like, that's not right. That's not going to work that way. And I'd get out the saw and I'd cut it off and then start right over. And so that would buy you a delay again. But I'm like, I got time. And hopefully that didn't cost me a lot of money, but I got time right now. And during this process, my dad had passed away. And so I'm not going to Bullhead anymore. I had settled his estate. So now I have nothing to do. I got some money in my pocket. Only thing I have to do is get this dream. And that was my dad's dream. His last sentences were get in that truck and go travel and see the world. And him and my mom traveled for, I think it was either 12 or 13 years in an RV before they bought the house to settle down as uh, sickness settles in, cancer and congestive heart failure and all of that. And that's what they went through. But it told me that like you got 86,400 seconds in a day and you got to make every one count. And I got that on a tattoo on my thigh right after my dad passed. Because I was like, man, time is limited here. You got relationships, you got creativeness, you got what you want to leave your legacy as. And so my legacy was I want to leave this as my YouTube journey of the build. And I built the whole Canyon, Humvee, and Oscar Mike is on YouTube on adventure.athlete. And I shared everything that I could so someone could take that as a blueprint and build their own. I wanted to share with the community how I did my build. And there's been a lot of discussions of you don't know what you're doing to, oh, that's great, and it's one of those things like, I'll talk about the negativeness of people at times. You got the guys on the forums will tell you exactly why what you're doing won't work, why I'm busy finishing it up and making it work. And it's that, I ran into that with putting the Humvee for sale. People like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. I wouldn't have, well, you haven't built anything. I built it the way I saw fit, easy to work on, easy to service. Try to make it nice to look at. Like, you want form and function, and it's kind of hard to get that into a package. So yeah, answering your questions, I know I'm long-winded, but I'm passionate about this stuff, so I love to talk about it. I finished up Oscar Mike, 2,750 watts of solar, 1,800 watts of lithium iron phosphate, 6,500 watts of dual phase or dual 220, 110 inverters. So I can run the welder with no problem. Ice maker, mill, lathe, all the tools are in it. Everything works off that truck. There's no generator, no place to plug it in. And it works 7 days a week, 365. It runs off a solar Starlink, 75-inch TV. The bed comes down out of the ceiling around the TV so you can watch TV in bed. And then on the Happy Jack goes back up. But as amazing as Oscar Mike is, you have to know where you're going to park it. It's 34 foot, 3410 nose to tip. And you have to know where you're going to park it. You got to know where you're going to get fuel. Runs on diesel. It gets about 10 miles a gallon, 9 to 10. I was surprised it does that well with a 46-inch tire, central tire inflation system, so I can air up and air down going down the road or off-road terrain. It was a dream build. It was everything I wanted as a 5-year-old kid. I got to be 5 again and been like, I want an electric dirt bike. I want a Stark Varg in it. I want an electric motion trials bike. I want a Quiet Cat fat bike that'll work in the sand dunes as well as PCH. So what I travel with is all electric now. It didn't start off that way, but everything charges off the truck. So I don't have to take fuel. Now I can sit somewhere out in the desert for a month or even 2. It has 100 gallons of water. I use about a gallon a day. I take a shower with instant hot water and a kind of a sprayer. So get yourself wet, soap up, shave, take care of your hygiene. But I seem to consume about a gallon, gallon and a half a day, and I can sit somewhere for a month pretty easy. It's got a big refrigerator, a big freezer, an upright. My wife wanted that in there, and my routine looks like I get up in the morning, I go fly my electric open PPG powered paramotor. I do a flight for about 40 minutes. I come back, I grab some coffee. I put it on the charger. Maybe I'll respond to my emails and social media stuff. Maybe I'll set myself up to make a video. Then I'll go put a session in on the Stark Varg, go ride that for an hour or two on hard enduro and work on techniques and strategies there. Come back. That one's probably done charging by now, but plug the Stark in and get it charged. And then still got another bike, the electric motion, that I can go do another afternoon session with, all while I'm watching TV, running the AC in it, all off the sun, which is absolutely, solar's a game changer, and battery technology. I'm just blown away with how cool that can be. And dream life. But
Yeah,
moving from,
that's epic. Sorry, keep going. I'm tripping. So, electric motor on your back for paragliding?
yes, yep, and it's called Open PPG 140. Um,
Okay.
they made here in the United States, and I think it ships out of Ohio. And being that I like the electric technology, I was an early adopter, and I got like their second generation, which was like their second month or third month making them. And I think super cool. For me, what it does, then I fly it on a trike now. I broke my ankle 30 years ago in motocross, and doing a foot launch for me is super difficult. Actually, the landing is more difficult for me than the launch. So I have this little light trike that I got from Blackhawk Paramotor, and I think that's up by you. It's up and from Merced, out by a big reservoir. And I
Okay.
did a 10-day training class there that I absolutely love, but I figured out that my foot launch ability is really limited. It has to be perfect conditions, a little 7 mile an hour wind, and you take off and get lift, because my ankle right now just doesn't like it. Uh, so I went with the electric and now a little trike, and I can take off, from a dirt road or whatever. And it just, talk about a sport that's scary and puts a smile on your face at the same time. I like to fly maybe 10 foot off the deck and just go through canyons on dirt bike trails, and it's just like riding a dirt bike, but you're flying and you're kind of on this pendulum swing. But the electric paramotor, while you're setting up, is not running. It's not rushing you like the two-stroke on your back. Bing, 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 and you're getting your wings set up. You're waiting for the right conditions. The electric motor's quiet. And although you can't fly it as long, I find that after 30 minutes, I'm pretty much done flying, and I got plenty of battery to do that and get back safe. So, yeah, I really like the electric technology. Do I think it's going to replace gas? No, I still have several gas motorcycles, but I like the electric technology for sure.
Well, it's an incredible setup. I can't wait to see some videos of that, especially as you move on to this kind of next phase that you were talking about in your life. Talk to me about what you're going through now in terms of downsizing your belongings and what your plans are in the next kind of 5 months, 6 months to a year,
Yeah,
and especially with Oscar Mike.
I'll finish up with why the Humvee came into existence. One, I've always wanted a Hummer or Humvee, and I looked at them in like '89, and they were $45,000 back in the day, and I was like, yeah, I can't swing that as a staff sergeant in the Air Force, and so I had that in my head, and then I had an opportunity where I had sold one of my the Can-Am X3 that I had done up, and a guy had this. I had been looking for about a year. GovPlanet has you can buy a Humvee for, I think, starting bids like $4,000, and but you got to find the right one, and I had already known that with Oscar Mike selecting the correct platform. When I started looking at Humvees, I thought they were all the same. I didn't know they made different variants. And so the M998 is kind of the 6.2 or 6.5 naturally aspirated diesel with a 3-speed in it. Yeah, and those are available all day long for $4,000. So I started doing my research, and then like the F550 type chassis Humvee is an 1165. It has a 6.5 turbo in it, and it's got a 4-speed in it. I'm like, well, I definitely want that one. Super cool platform. It's all braided in stainless lines, and it even has a coolant pump in the rear diff that pumps out the diff fluid and cools it and brings it back into the diff. I mean, it's kind of overkill, but I thought the Humvee platform would be a neat truck platform because of the width, and then the seats are placed so far out that it really gives you a lot of space for a short platform. And the limits with Oscar Mike is like I talked about. You have to know where you're going, where you're going to go, and when you're traveling on the road, you kind of got to use iOverlander a little bit more and kind of look at where bigger trucks get into, and you're doing a blend between a giant semi truck and an expedition truck. And I thought, man, it would be cool to have as my daily, because now the Canyon's gone. I saw its purpose. And so I'll build that same floor plan just a foot wider, basically. And I'm definitely going to make a sheet of plywood fit in this one. And so I was able to do that, but I didn't want that big, tall camper. And I like the look and I like the aerodynamics of something short. So I thought I'll build a high-low camper. I've never done nothing like this. It's going to be hard, and I like to do hard things. And so I'm like, let's build the roof so it moves up 24 inches on linear actuators. And then knowing what I know about the wind, I want to be able to have hard sides. So with how it's shaped, no way to do that because of the front and the taper on it. So I was like, I'll make flip up panels to flip in place. And the clocking wouldn't work. So the front one flips up and then the two other ones plug in on the sides. But I was able to achieve a hard sided camper on that fits in a parking spot. So you're 5 days into your trip and you're like, you know what? I would love to go have some Mexican food and a margarita and then get a hotel for the night, take a long shower, clean up, and get a great shave going on and take my time in the morning, maybe even have breakfast and go down that path. So the Humvee filled that equation. But getting to your question, what is my next 5-month plan? So I'll back up about 2 years ago when Oscar Mike was operational. My wife's like, let's do Newport Dunes. We camped there during COVID in the GMC Canyon, and we kind of lived there for 4 months out of the canyon. And she's like, yeah, let's do it in Oscar Mike. I'm like, let's do it. So they had an open area for us, one of the spots on the bluff, and not a cheap place to camp, and probably not the right fit for an expedition truck in a campground. But it's what we had, and I backed in, and we stayed there for 3 months. 2 summers ago, last year we did 4 months, and this year we're going to do 3 months as I get through this. But every time I came back, I wrote in my journal daily, everything you need is in the truck. You got your bicycle, you got your one wheel, electric unicycle, you're riding stuff daily, going for runs, kayaking. I carry a kayak in there, inflatable, and everything that you need is in here for a quality life. You got Starlink for internet and watching TV. There's nothing that you're missing. And I'm like, so I came home and I'm like, okay, I'm selling off the shop and I'm hitting the road. So that was one of my videos, selling off the shop, hitting the road. And my wife went to Costa Rica for a yoga training class to get her $500 certification. And I stayed home and put stuff on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and I did $72,000 worth of equipment sold in the shop in 28 days. And I'm like, all right. So I filmed, my CNC mill and lathe going on the diesel truck, my manual lathe and my manual mill coming out. These guys got to show up with like forklifts to get this stuff out.
Super heavy.
Yeah. And so it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy, but like it went down the road and I'm like, oh man, I feel relieved. And then I felt the panic set in of the capabilities of myself in the shop. What did I just do? I can no longer design parts in my head and machine them and have this cool piece that I'm like, I could just buy somebody else's cool machine stuff. And I'm like, how am I going to do without another little lathe? So I bought a little combo unit. So I'd buy stuff back. Then I sold my CNC plasma. And like CNC plasma to me is like having another arm. Like you can really do some cool stuff with just the CNC plasma. And I bought another one. It was hard to program. I sold it. I bought this little Arc Droid setup, and I absolutely love the Arc Droid. And then the Everlast, I had a 62i on the first one. And then I'm like, okay, came back from Newport Dunes last year. I'm like, selling off the rest of the stuff in the shop. So I sold off the CNC plasma and a couple welders and this and that. And 4 months later, I felt that, oh no, the capability of the shop's gone. So I bought back some stuff again. And I've went back, I've hem and hawed, and I've kind of done this path that isn't straight lined. But it really allows you to reflect and think about like, what do I want out of my life? Do I want to be, doing the Humvee, when you're fabricating, you're going to get cut. You're going to get burned. You're going to cut yourself with a knife. You're going to poke yourself with some wire down the electric. Like, I don't care how careful you are. Sooner or later, that little weld bead's going to drop down in your shoe and it's going to burn a hole through your sock and your ankle. You're going to be dealing with pain, working upside down and backwards underneath there, welding something on a rock slider or something. Do you want to do that for the rest of your life, or do you want to ride wheelies on your bicycle or motorcycle, or do you want to fly, or do you want to be the best version of yourself in that genre? And so there's two really distinct pieces of me. There's the Tim Robel concept side where I like to build and create and kind of show the world what I'm capable of. And, it doesn't fit everybody's stuff, but I love what I build. And I'm like, I'm proud of Oscar Mike. I'm proud of this Humvee. The quality on the Humvee is probably 1.5 times of what it is on Oscar Mike. It's just my latest evolution of woodwork, materials used, and how I put it together. I absolutely love how that thing wheels. I didn't put a ton of weight in it, and it actually wheels like a real four-wheeler does. So that's what that natural evolution came to. Back to Newport Dunes again. We're getting ready to go again. And I'm like, you know what? I already know I'm going to come back and sell everything. It's usually after King of the Hammers, I come back and I'm like, I have to build this. And so I buy another welder. So I'm at that spot now where I'm about broke. And that may be a good thing. Because what I'm doing now is final decision time. I carry a ESOB Rebel 205 in Oscar Mike. So I still have a MIG welder, TIG welder. I still have a Grizzly little mill so I can face some parts or whatever I need to do to fix stuff. I still have their little lathe that works phenomenal to machine something that I may, need to fix or create. And so I have that all in the truck. So everything in the shop this time, I'm selling toolboxes, stuff that I've had since I was 3 or 4 years old, is going heirlooms that didn't go in Oscar Mike. I'm selling that because I don't want a chain or a anchor here.
Mm-hmm.
You run into that when you're in the road. You be on a month trip and you're like, I got to get back and do this. I got to do that. I'm like, I don't want anything to come back for. I just want to be able to be free and get up every morning. Not every morning is going to be roses. I mean, you wake up in the morning and it's raining sideways and hailing outside. Maybe you play a video game. Maybe you work out in your little indoor gym. I always make it a point to get out for 3 hours a day, regardless of weather. No bad weather, just bad clothes choices. And so I carry all the gear to go train in the snow or train in the heat. And I do well in all environments. And it's just kind of what it is. So yeah, as much as it hurts me, I have the Humvee up for sale. And I'm at 145 firm, and I know people have been like, but on paper, if I had to build that for a client, it would have been 256,000 that I came up with labor and for everything. And people that haven't built habitats they don't even have any weight to chime in on. It's expensive. You can put metal, $3,000. It's going to be in metal. Insulation, 500. Wood to finish out the inside, carpet and everything, 1,500, 2,000. laying out sinks and refrigerators and heaters and all of your environment, maybe another 5,000 total. You start adding that up, you're like, well, on paper, that's only 20 grand. Yeah. Then you look at what your Amazon, I got a business, Amazon business account. Then you look at like, oh, why I'm building that. I spent $3,000 on incidentals, things that you didn't, uh, I need a five gang switch panel. You get that, you get it all wired up and you're like, yeah, crap. I needed seven. So now you got to rebuy. You didn't foresee that, but to make it right, you got to buy the seven. It's only another $28, right? So you buy that. Then you're like, oh, I'm out of VHB. Let me order another roll. And then you're like, oh, it's a week out. You're like, crap. Let me order 2 rolls because I don't want to ever run out again. Sikaflex. You start off with 20 tubes and you go through the first day and you're like, I need another 20 tubes at $15 a piece. In white. In black is, I think it's 18, and you use black for like a lot of interior stuff. So, yeah, you go down that path and you're like, I need wire. That's another $100. The
Yeah, it all
connector,
adds up
it does. And
super quick.
super, super quick. Yep. And so that's how you come to those numbers. So yeah, long story short, I'm at that spot now where I'm, okay with fighting with myself and saying, you know what, everything's selling. If this doesn't sell, that's not gonna change the program because my original plan was to run a 2 truck program of doing adventurous things daily on the road. And while I'm waiting for this stuff to sell, I'm gonna do these what I'll call micro adventures. And I have the Arizona Peace Trail set up to do on my 2024 KTM 890 rally. And I'm gonna go solo, self-supported, with a drone, little Hover Air Pro Max, and DJI Osmo action cam, and then I'll use my iPhone for the rest. And I'm going to record that journey, and I'm sure it's not going to be a smooth one. It's going to be my second real motorcycle self-supporting expedition, but 120 to 150 miles a day. With a day zero of travel getting to the trail is going to be 225, 250. And then a day 9 getting back, same mileage from Bullhead City. But Arizona Peace Trail, I'm going to do that, see all the sites, try to film what I've learned, and do real world gear reviews on the way, and then just kind of story tell my journey going down that path. And back quick recovery. Then I'm going to jump on my Sava Carbon mountain bike. I'm going to ride from San Bernardino to Newport Beach and take the Catalina Flyer over to Catalina. And I'll do 5 days, 4 nights there, bike packing, the island. And then take the Flyer back, spend the night in Newport somewhere, maybe sleeping on the streets or wherever on a little behind some bushes. And then ride the bike back 78 miles on the bike trail to get back to San Bernardino. So that's the 2 that I have set up. And then we are scheduled for Newport Dunes in July again with Oscar Mike, which will take us through the hot part of the summer. And I can still manage deals from there and come home as stuff is selling off. And then hopefully October 1st, I hope to live in Oscar Mike for Southern Arizona and Utah. Before it gets too cold in Moab, I'd like to get there before that really sets in. And then come back to like the Quartzsite Boulders Off-Road Park there in Arizona to do some single track riding on the Barg and do some flying and just start living that life more full time.
Those are some amazing adventures. I cannot wait for the motorcycle trip, but also the bicycle trip. Haven't been to Catalina, haven't been down there. That's way to find adventure in your own backyard. That's what I can say about that. That's super cool.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have to make these epic long road trips. You can go just down the road. Like for me, I go up to Badger Canyon, which is behind Cal State. There's Badger Canyon and Devil's Canyon. And that's kind of one of those things. It's like I take the dogs up there a couple times a week. There's water available for them to run and splash in. And it's literally like 6 miles from the house. And you can spend the day, you know, in the Humvee figuring out what you need. Like, oh, I need to carry more dog food. I need more water for the dogs. I need Starlink on the Humvee because cell service doesn't work in this canyon. So it's different solving problems and finding solutions for your stuff not too far from the house. And if there's a mechanical, AAA can come pick you up and take you back home, and you can fix that and go down the road. And why I'm saying that, I don't always get my processes right the first time on these builds. And you have to be able to be humble and say, you know what, that didn't work. I'm going to cut this off and redo it. And sometimes you end up redoing a process, I don't know, 10 times. I'm sure the average person doesn't have to do it that much, but sometimes I'm slow and hard-headed. But you learn during the process, and you have to keep that in mind on whatever way you do things. On paper is one thing. You can be the most versed internet guy on the forum, and you've seen everybody's builds, and you've criticized things, and this is how you would do it. But it's until you actually do it and get out there and use it, you go, okay, well, I thought I was going to need this, but I don't. Oscar Mike, for instance, I put a washer dryer unit in it, and I went 3 years with never using it. Now I still have it. It can still plug back in as a module, but I prefer the space for other stuff. And then when I need to go use the laundromat once a month, because I carry a ton of clothes, and let's be honest, when you're out, you're not cycling through clothes like you are in a normal out of your house. I think I changed clothes at the house probably 4 times a day. Different clothes for different things. If you're going to lay down and do something, you're going to go get in your work clothes. In the morning, when you're going to do the run, you're in your athletic stuff. You're going to do a podcast. You change your clothes to look halfway decent for the podcast.
Totally.
So, if you're going to go out for dinner, in the truck, you're not running into those things. Newport, I think I wear the same pair of shorts 5 days in a row, and I go to the shower and take a shower in my shorts and wash them out there and wear them wet out. Like, it happens all the time. 3 months, I never do laundry. I go wash everything in the shower, and maybe on the 3rd month, I'll have my wife do a load. She does laundry probably once a week there. For myself, nasty guy, whatever you want to call it. But that's just how that MO works. So for me, being out on the road once a month, I'm sure will be go do a couple loads in the laundromat and not have to carry around all that equipment with me. But on paper is one thing, and then actual use of what you think you're going to do is something else. And it's I also have a rule on that. Like, if I haven't used something in a camp trip on several occasions, I'll put it in the front passenger seat. And that's where that stuff goes. I'm like, am I going to need that? Maybe you're emotionally attached to something. You're like, I'm going to need that someday. And then 3 years goes by, and you're like, I've never touched that. It can go in the front seat. And then if it makes the whole trip in the front seat, then I take it out and I put it in the shop. And then if it does a couple months in the shop, then I put it for sale and I get it down the road.
I love it.
So it's always evolving, trying to make your environment the best you can. And what you think you need isn't actually what you always need, but you kind of go down that path and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, you've shared a lot of amazing insights and your stories and just what you've learned on the road and in your shops. Super grateful for the time you got to, for taking the time to sit down and have a chat, and really appreciate all the insights. And it sounds like you have an amazing trip, a couple trips lined up. I can't wait to see the video of you flying around in the paraglider and then hopping on the e-motorcycle, ripping around. That's too cool.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to leave with our listeners before we close out this podcast episode, Tim?
No, I felt like I talked a lot, but excuse that, but I'm super passionate about it. I'm an open book. I'm adventure.athlete on Instagram and YouTube. I'm Tim Robel on Facebook. And if you're not somebody that's weirdo, I accept everyone. And I'm here to help. That's the one thing that I want to share. Like, I may have a different way to do it, but if you want to bounce ideas off of me, I'm not charging people for my time. I just like to help out the overland adventure and expedition community. And I'm here to help. I'm here to learn. I don't, by no means do I know everything or think the way I do it is the right way. It's the way I know and what I enjoy, and I evolve and adapt every single day. So that being said, I'm so honored that you reached out to me to have me here, and hopefully I didn't talk your ear off too much.
I think you talked my ear off in the best way possible. I walked away with so many lessons, and as you kept talking, I was just thinking about how I could apply what you were speaking about, whether it was drawing the dream rig on paper and then getting the parts to do it, or how you form your environment and just staying adaptable, and also finding local adventures in your backyard is just, it all speaks volumes to me, and I'm sure our listeners as well. So I'll link below to all of your information so people can follow you on Instagram, or check out your YouTube channel. And I'm sure they can reach out via comments or a DM or something if they have questions. I know I'm going to keep your phone number close because I'm always wondering, I'm always needing someone to bounce ideas off of. So thanks again for putting that plug out there that you're here to help and share your knowledge. It's super appreciative.
Awesome. You're welcome.